how we're discovering and researching is changing significantly. So websites are going to be less viewed by people, but bots. I mean, that's already happened today. Really about making sure you got your website structured not just for people, but so it can be read effectively by AI to give those recommendations.
Welcome to the Customer Commerce Podcast, where technology's fast and biz is a blast.
In life and in business, time is precious. It's why customers stay or leave and why businesses succeed or fail. We're here to give a voice to everything that makes business, whether as a customer or as a CEO, easier and more rewarding. Welcome to the Customer Commerce Podcast. Let's dive in. Welcome back to the Customer Commerce Podcast. Today we're diving into a topic that many businesses find daunting, but is absolutely crucial for scaling. And that is making sense of your data to drive real results. Now, before you roll your eyes and groan that you already know it's something you're meant to do, but it's all confusing and the data is against you, blah, 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 I think you're going to be delightfully surprised because we are joined with a guest who does this full time. James King is known as a digital strategist. Now, I'm going to let him break down exactly what that means, but essentially, and I'm quoting him here, he helps teams make better decisions by creating clear dashboards and tailored training, growing ROI and retail success. His niche has been in the beauty world, most recently working with global brands like Benefit, which shout out to Benefit for having the best bronzer on the planet. I've been using it personally for 16 years. Big fan. We're going to jump straight into it. James, welcome to the pod. I believe you're coming to us from London.
Yes, yeah, we just flown in yesterday actually. So yeah, obviously with my accent, I'm from UK and lived in Sydney for the last 12, 15 years. But got young kids and it's the last year before they start school. So good chance to see family and spend lots of time, and then obviously avoid the Sydney winter, which isn't really that bad anyway. But yeah, so it's going well. And thanks for the kind intro.
Oh, no worries. So your kids kind of get the best of both worlds, I guess, in Australia and the UK. Are they like, when they go to the UK, they like, are
Well,
they
this
kind of
is,
like,
so now the funny thing is we're both English, and hearing Aussie accents in, a 3 and a 5-year-old is is an odd thing to us. So we've yet to like properly catch up with family here, but I think that's going to be the first things is, like proper Aussie kids.
oh my gosh, that's going to be
It's nice.
hilarious. You're like, yeah, all right, mum. Okay.
Yeah.
G'day. G'day, uncle.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny to think how
Amazing.
it'll be, yeah.
Well, I wanted to give you a compliment to start off the episode, which is your website is beautiful.
Thank you.
I don't know if I'm just like an aesthetic little chick that just likes the visuals a lot, but as I wanted to have you on the podcast, I was going through your website and you present yourself very simple, which is so interesting because you're all about data and that's just numbers and all this kind of thing. So when you're talking about making data simple, which is music to many business owners' ears, what exactly do you mean by simple? What does that look like from a
Yeah.
business perspective?
Good kind of framing, because when you think of it from a business perspective, because that's the side I've come from. So I actually started out, in my early days of my career, I was in field sales in UK. So I was basically with Danone, helping get the right spacing in Tesco's, etc., for yogurts and Evian water, etc. And then moved into category management, which is basically helping to understand like how much spacing different categories should have to optimize for the retailer, and then into e-commerce, and then more recently into digital marketing for the last decade. And all that kind of experience made me realize over time is like, there's just this overwhelm of data generally, and everyone struggles with it. Like I think, even I struggle a lot with it, and I think it starts with there's just analysis paralysis, too much numbers in our day to day. So we can see a sea of numbers and be completely overwhelmed by it. And then that's one thing. And then the other side is the looking at the wrong numbers. So it ends up being looking at these vanity metrics that really aren't going to guide the business forward. So so that's what my passion in setting up Data Made Simple. I've been going a couple of years, independently, was to help brands make better decisions with data by basically stripping back as much as possible. So and just kind of explain what it was, and I thought, well, that's great. That's a good name for it.
And do you find when you get with people that you work with, do you find like you have to really simplify even just the meanings of what certain statistics, certain data actually means? Is there a common misconception of what a certain metric is that you always have to be like, this isn't what you think it is, and it's actually not important, and I'd
Yeah.
actually suggest you not to concentrate on it whatsoever?
Yeah, and I think it's a great way to start, like the big, almost like assuming a beginner's mindset for everyone. Strip everything back. There was even one, I put a post around this yesterday about the fact that what are vanity metrics, and someone brought up a point like page depth and engagement time. That doesn't necessarily mean it's good, right? If you're spending long on the page, it might be lost. There's just so many of those metrics.
What would a business, I mean, just from an e-commerce point of view, what do you feel are the really important ones? Like if they're not really capturing anything right now, what should they start?
Yeah, and and I sometimes struggle with this question because that comes a lot, because it does depend on the business, what their goals of the business are. Like, are they aggressively scaling at all costs? Are they being more cautious, and it's about obviously like knowing the type of business they have, with customer loyalty and this kind of thing. For me, it starts with just more making sure you've got the data accurate, like as a starting point, and then more importantly is going down to each team and role, is understanding those KPIs, because I think this is where it comes back to that overwhelm. I'm sure you've been in business meetings before, or business reviews. Look around the room and you'll see that half of the audience have checked out, particularly when it gets to the heavy numbers, because it doesn't relate to them, and or they don't have that kind of depth of understanding. So yeah, it's more on a case by case basis of like what are their goals of that business, and then how can we simplify it and strip everything out of that.
I have a book called True Team, and we go into, in order to, like, business is a game, and in order to have a game, you have to keep score. And if you're not keeping score on the various points and comparing that to a previous period, you don't know if you're winning or losing, right? Is it getting better or is it getting worse? Because data in of itself is useless unless you can compare it with something, right? Or it's
Yes,
not useless, but it definitely reduces value.
100%.
And unless you've got, like in my companies, I think we track, everyone has a statistic that they track, which is what they do for a job. And we track hundreds of different metrics through the company on a weekly basis. And what it means is, sometimes you're able to then see that things aren't going the way they used to be going. And you can go back in time effectively and look at that historical trend and say, well, what happened there when it broke? It was going this way, now it's going this way. And what can we do about that, and how can we fix it? I think it's a very underserved part of the market. And for me, it's always the challenge is the quality of the data. Like, how accurate is what you're looking at? Is it actually correct? Did someone just go in and mark all the opportunities that were over 3 months old as closed lost with the wrong reason because they didn't want to deal with them anymore, as opposed to they weren't closed lost, they were just in the buying cycle and now we're not talking to them anymore, or whatever the problem is, right? Do you find that you go in and have to correct a lot of data? Is that when you're first starting
Yeah,
with the data? Are you doing an audit sort
100%.
of thing?
And just to start, with the benchmarking piece, I think that's absolutely key, because not having that comparison, it makes it useless, really. Like you say, everything for me starts with trusting the data, and getting the data accurate. Because I mean, take Google Analytics 4, obviously we're 2 years now into that. I know many businesses don't touch it because they don't really trust the data, and I think, well, if you're going to do that for GA4, but you're implementing this in AI, like, why should you be trusting AI? Why should you be investing in media mix modeling, which is an advanced form of attribution, if you don't even kind of trust your baseline of data? It just feels very backwards to me that there's acceleration of like, run, crawl, or run,
Yeah,
walk, crawl rather than
it's like
crawl, walk,
run,
run.
jump, walk. But
Yeah. What's
how are
that
you
mean? Yeah.
how are you dealing with like server side versus client side data and that sort of thing? It's a big topic for our
Yeah.
clients at Store Connect because we sort of enable them to get all of that data within their Salesforce environment. So they're able to just see
Mm,
it directly. So it's all first party data. And
right.
we're seeing a large trend towards getting this first party data. Are you seeing issues with first party, third party cookies, all of that sort of stuff?
Yeah,
GDPR?
yes and no. I mean, it depends again on the business. So as a rule of thumb, server-side tracking, which obviously, yeah, is completing, particularly let's take from a GA4 perspective, like completing that view. So you're seeing full purchases in GA4, but obviously also then sending that missed data to your marketing platforms, to grow, abandoned carts, etc. as well. So I lean towards like those plug and play solutions where possible. So just make it as simple as possible. So there's Elevar, little data, etc. Um, yeah, I think it's a really important area. It's just that I think, yeah, getting uh, there's just a lot of the basics outside of that which also need sorting. But yeah, how are you finding it? How do you
It,
see side?
the GDPR problem, I mean, it's the wrong word. Respecting people's privacy and getting actionable data at the same time is a challenge. I think
Mm,
in a lot of different spaces because you have the push and pull between marketing and legal on that point.
mm,
I think one of the interesting things that's happening with what we're doing at Store Connect at least is we're starting to allow the clients to directly run reports on their first party data, sessions and carts and things like that are instantly pulled in straight into their Salesforce org, and they're able to actually correlate
nice.
that and do reporting on that live and have dashboards that are live updating and things like that. It takes a lot more work to sort of get it in place because
Mm,
you don't have a team of thousands of developers building your Google Analytics dashboards. Like GA4, just for anyone who isn't familiar with that term, is Google Analytics version 4. It's their next attempt at owning the e-commerce data market, I guess, is their viewpoint on it. But yeah, it's been an interesting journey, and I've run into it myself. Trying to work out which ads are actually converting versus which ones are not, and you run into all sorts of different challenges in trying to capture that
mm.
data.
Yeah, no, I think about kind of obviously that's some of the basics. I think the other aspects of the basics is just even the naming conventions and things like that. There's a great quote I heard from Marketing Operators. It's a podcast which I recommend from the three CMOs of nine-figure companies over in US. And one of them says, the heart of and soul of a brand lies in its naming conventions,
Yeah,
which is
right.
a bit, which is kind of true. Because if you think about, you're just talking there about like, oh, how effective a campaign or something is. When I jump into ad accounts, sometimes it will be, the naming will be like, ad account to, it's just all very odd, kind of just non-conventional naming. So it's very hard to then use, analyze, etc., and use, it comes back to UTM parameters as well, which is basically like the end of the URL to understand where your customer is coming from. Again, that can be really messy, and your email data will be sitting in referral data, etc. So that's how I see a lot. I spend a lot of time just getting that piece right, because taking a step back on all of this, where you started was like trusting the data. If you don't trust the data, we won't really go to that next stage of then you know reporting and making decisions from it.
Wow, there's a lot of responsibility or confrontingness of having to, like, for a particular person to be like, yep, okay, we're just going to go into it. And if we got to fix it, we got to fix it. I mean, it makes sense on why I'm just listening from a very much outsider view of why you would hire someone, an expert to do this. Because if one's just trying to run their business, scale their business, and things aren't making sense, it just seems like such a arduous thing to go back and figure it out. Is there a certain period of time when you're gathering all the information? Only thinking of this like from the statistics that Michael was talking about within the team, he also built a statistics business. What would you want to call it? Like a platform?
It's a way to measure and manage the expansion of a company called Metapulse. But yeah, I built it for my company so that I would have actionable data from a business point of view, not necessarily just e-commerce and online, but more for, tracking how much income we've made and how many sales we've made, and having that in a single source that allows me to just view data in a very simple way of just line graphs, and comparing the current period with the period with a previous one is very important.
Yeah, and we kind of tend to look at the 6 weeks as kind of the period of time that you can see, okay, well, something happened, so we have to go back to what that successful action was, or unsuccessful action was. Do you have a kind of period of time that you go, okay, well, I'm going to look at this section to then be able to give your clients a really good idea of this thing is working, or something here 3 months ago this happened? What's your kind of gauge?
Yeah, I mean, starting even back, like I said, in field sales at Danone, the benchmark was like, we always need 6 weeks of data. I think,
Okay.
I think obviously it depends on the context, but
Mm.
to really see an impact of something, yeah, I think 6 weeks is key. But
Okay.
yeah, it really depends on the context.
I would be interested to know if there's a particular difference, you working in the beauty industry side of
Yeah.
things. Are you still deep into that? That's like your niche, right? Would you call that?
Yeah, as you can tell, I'm a beauty guy. I would have never have thought I would end up in this space. But that said, I'm almost a decade into working with beauty brands, and early on, it wasn't until recently that I really kind of realized how different and how unique that industry is. One example is just the frequency of product launches. So, in the FMCG world, in the supermarket aisle, you maybe have, one or two brand launches a year. It's that line extensions. Whereas within beauty, it's probably every month. You've got a new product, there's a new shade or a completely new product. And from that creates complexity from obviously a business perspective, because you're obviously constantly launching, not much time to look back. But also then from a customer's perspective, increasingly it's getting overwhelming, to be honest. Almost this whiplash effect of like, oh, there's another new product from this brand and that brand, and there's another brand launching at the same time. And then there's then there's the sales channels perspective, which is okay, we've now got Amazon competing. There's TikTok Shop, which is in the US and coming over here. All these marketplaces and different fragmentation generally in the market across products, brands and sales channel just creates that huge opportunity at the same time to kind of come back to simplicity and driving and helping less analytical teams make better decisions. So that's how I've ended up in this space.
And what do you feel like has caused you to stay in that? Like, what's the thing that you're like, you know what, this point really interests me, so I don't
Well,
want to kind of move out?
I think a lot about this or phrase, which is like, what's your unfair advantage? And this is actually good for like all of us to think of in the age of AI. Like, what's our unfair advantage versus AI? Personally or as a business. And I know I've always been strong at translating, understanding the business sense, because I've come from that side, and then translating that to less technical teams. But
Mm.
then I kind of think that layer deeper is like, oh, okay, that's good, and there are still a lot of people that can do that well. But then taking that next stage of going, well, I also know this industry really well. I know the unique dynamics. I know how the systems work, etc. That's why I kind of doubled down in this and stayed in this sector. But yeah, just also like reliance on going into store to try on a product, like the high product count, the operational complexity. Yeah, it's just fascinating to me. Like, as I say, like I'm kind of annoyed I don't benefit from the like, I haven't had a brow wax and things like that.
You can
All
send
the
the samples
benefits.
to me. Send the
Oh
samples
yeah,
to me.
yeah. Well, all the benefit when I was working at Benefit Cosmetics, their expertise is in brows, and like they were always trying to get me to do a brow wax. I'm like, yeah, maybe next week, you know.
You know what? I got a brow. It's called a brow thread. And
Yeah,
because I used to work, do social media for a beauty business back in the day, and they were like, "Yeah, we want to do a little brow threading," and I was like, "Okay, I got brows, so there's something to do with it." I hated it. I looked like a completely different person, and I've never done it again. Now
yeah,
I'm like, no.
No.
So you might regret it. So maybe it's a good
yeah.
thing that you,
I'll
you
leave it.
haven't
Yeah,
taken up on that.
Michael would have had a brow wax, right?
Oh yeah, totally.
Surely.
I have one every
All the
Tuesday.
time. Yeah.
It's like my standing totally thing. If you've watched the Customer Commerce podcast, you know there's a very clear divide between my appreciation of beauty products and Jess's.
There's a big divide. I've been trying to set Michael up because he has a beautiful daughter, and she will one day be a teenage girl
This is
and
true.
a lady. I could talk about beauty. I could talk about skincare specifically for ages, but there's within the commerce world. I mean, the beauty industry is, in my opinion, dominating in the e-commerce world. Like they have so many opportunities because their target markets are just always online, and they do want to know, like, I have a foundation, but I would much rather go. And if I see an ad pop up that's like, it's easier to put on, if you sweat, it doesn't go yucky. It's like the advance of technology in makeup is moving all the time, and the brands that come out with just different ways that are like, oh, even though you could have 5 foundations that do the same exact thing, the way it's presented and marketed, and now this foundation looks good on your bathroom sink is a reason to buy it.
Yeah.
Mm.
It's so clever.
And this is
So how do you track data like that?
more just broadly tracking data in that world is very difficult because it is so reliant on wholesale channels. So, retail partners, so department stores, specialty retail, travel retail, like there's, probably 10 different accounts where it isn't D2C owned D2C.
Mm.
And those retailers will share their data, if you're lucky, once a week, and they'll send it in a CSV file. And they say, "Hey, good luck." And there's no one, necessarily, particularly in small to mid companies that don't have a specialist in, who can actually, put all that data together, make sense of it, and take action on it. So that, and then take that also perspective of, if you want to buy market data, that's costly. If you the kind of Nielsen's of the world, where you're getting understanding competitor information, so you can understand where you should be investing next. That costs money. Field teams cost money. So I think there's, in some respects, and actually this leads to something, background of working within both big businesses and small businesses, like seeing the advantages and disadvantages of each. I think in some ways the small to mid companies have got this huge opportunity. Take Estee Lauder, for instance, in this world, like they just dropped minus 10% in the last quarter, whereas because of all these smaller brands that are kind of nipping at the heels and growing, but they just don't necessarily have as clear a direction because they don't have all these insights, they don't have the field teams, etc. So that's also part of my role, is like how to get that data. I mean, and to answer your original question, there are ways to kind of understand even availability data, scraping from retailer websites to give those smaller brands a little bit more insights is key.
Interesting. Is there a specific metric or data that you think these small, like, you work with the big dogs, but maybe slightly smaller, that brands are sleeping on, that you're like, oh man, if they knew this, that could make a world's difference, specifically for the teams or the brand itself to make customer focused decisions, not necessarily like, are the sales going up or down, but like,
Yeah, I mean, there's small examples like the social team in a business, or a social individual, depending on the size of business, not knowing that a product's out of stock in a region because the disconnect between operations and commercial team and the brand team, so there's silos in every business, but that's an example of one.
It's funny that you say that because I go, well, that's common sense. Like the business would know if a product is out of stock. And it's the reason why I think it's interesting that we're all in this conversation together is because Store Connect is like a platform that handles that. So it's not even, well, they're missing that data. I mean, it's just they're probably in a bajillion other silos that, well, this isn't connected to this. So the person that's in charge of the data is in the wrong bloody
Yeah.
program and not
Yeah.
looking at that thing. So it's
Yeah.
just funny how all these things interconnect to each
Yeah,
other to do
100%.
one
And
job.
I think you're solving important work of literally like how to break down these silos. If we zoom out of all of this, that's what we're trying to do is help teams connect better to each other. And that's a huge one. Again, industry specific, but just because, well, not necessarily. Like there's more competition. There's actually, the consumers generally in every industry are being more, cautious around, is this product effective? How much is it costing? So there's also this dynamic, and not just a small business and large business nipping at the heels of the largest business because they can tailor better, but also the mass brands, the lower price kind of you'll see in Coles, Woolworths, etc., versus the prestige brands, which is also nipping at the heels of those prestige brands. So I think whichever segment a brand sits in, it's just making sure, coming back to the customer, making sure your customer really well, and you're like niching and focusing on that, because there's just so much competition. If you're trying to be, you can't be one thing to everyone.
What's your stance on AI with all of this?
Yeah, I find it interesting because actually it's a question back to you. Like I've been thinking how to frame this is like, how have you researched a product on using ChatGPT when you're buying things?
I have, definitely.
Because Jess is thinking a while.
I take photos. I was just thinking because I literally took a photo of a plant the other day on ChatGPT and I was like, is this low maintenance?
Mm. How we're discovering and researching is changing significantly. So whilst I said at the beginning, also like, get the basics right before moving on to AI, at the same time, this, we can't slow down on this. This is happening day by day, very quickly. What I was considering was the fact that websites are going to be less viewed by people, but bots. I mean, that's already happened today. So it's really about making sure you got your website structured, not just for people, but so it can be read effectively by AI to give those recommendations. And then I thought about, okay, so what's the kind of action out of that? Actually, in a way, my view, it doesn't really change. You really still need to understand your customer really well and tailor to them, because and niche in your field of expertise. Because if you think about it, what AI is doing, they understand this, the person that's asking the question better and better. So it knows to tailor, a pair of running shoes. It will know your style, your size, etc., and it will give you a recommendation which is niche to that space. The key for me is like, just keep on focusing on your customer. Those customers, your core customers, they give you good reviews, they refer to you on forums, this kind of thing. All of those are being picked up by AI and giving you the recommendations back. So I think it's about just keeping it as simple as possible and just focusing on your core customer.
I love it. It's a simple solution. Don't go thinking of reinventing the wheel for some other solution to
Yeah.
help. Like it's right in front of you.
It really just comes down to, I think, like what he was saying at the start is, to analyze the data, you have to have the data. So start capturing the data and try and make it as pure as possible so that you've got as close to raw as possible, and then move forward from there. So yeah, it's always good to get a reaffirmation of that, because I'm a strong believer in it. We run all of my companies off data.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the stats don't lie.
Yeah, 100%.
Love
Yeah.
it. Well, James, thank you so much for a beautiful conversation. We're going to put your LinkedIn website, anything else that you think our listeners would benefit from in connecting with you. And we'll be back next week with another guest. It's been great having people like you, just having great conversations all about
Yeah.
commerce and
I
customers.
appreciate the time. No, it's great to chat, and thank you.
You're
Thank you
so
very much.
welcome. Have a great
All right.
day.
Thank you.
Bye.
Yeah.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for joining us today. We hope you had an awesome time, leaving you with ideas on how to improve your business and wow customers. If you'd like to leave a real customer's story, head to the link in our show notes and cuss away. Love the show? Please subscribe and leave a review, because that enables us to help more businesses in building real relationships with customers and grow more rapidly. See you next time.